Being a professional does not mean that you're always available. Hey, it's Rob Polia, real estate broker, coach, and author of Real Estate Reset. Now, this topic came up in a class that I was teaching the other day when I brought up the fact that I work pretty traditional business hours. Now, I'm not saying traditional realtor hours of 24/7 like most agents do. I'm talking about traditional business hours of working just that banker's hours Monday through Friday, and still having flexibility to live a life by design. Now, I want to cover how I do that and hopefully pass along some tips and tricks to you that'll allow you to do similar and maybe even the same. Maybe you want to live that life by design, work the traditional business hours, have time for your family, have time for the passions and the purpose that lay in your heart and soul. Now, before I jump into all the tips and tricks, if any of this resonates with you, do me a favor, hit the like, follow, and subscribe buttons for me. That way more of this will show up on your feed. Also, feel free to check out Real Estate Reset. Go to realestatereset.org. You can check out the book. You can even book a call with me if you'd like. The first call is free. Happy to chat with you and see how we can help you create memories, not just business plans. Now, back to what we were talking about today. We're talking about helping you create a business structure so that you can work the hours that you choose, to where you don't have to be reactive, you can be proactive. That's the goal, right? Is so that you can be proactive, you can work the times that you want to work, whether that be Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, 9 to 3, whether that be taking some days off during the week and you're working on the week, whatever that might be. Like, it's your life. But the whole goal is that you can be proactive and not reactive. The first way you do that is by setting clear expectations. You see, most real estate agents think they have to reply to something instantly and that's how they're going to create trust. That's wrong. The reality is that clear expectations create trust, not instant replies. And that's what we want to get into today. We want to talk a little bit about how we set those clear expectations with our clients. The first thing you can do, aside from, of course, setting clear expectations, is to have a clear expectation for your business. So when do you want to set appointments? Because after all, the first real client interaction that we start with is the appointment. Whether it's a listing appointment and we're meeting with somebody to talk about listing their home, or we're having a buyer's consultation with somebody, that's the very first time that we're trying to coordinate schedules, right? And coordinating schedules is going to go far beyond that initial meeting. It's going to be everyday communication. If you're working with a buyer, it's going to be showings. If it's a listing, it's when they can talk with you. It's when they can ask for feedback. It's when you're delivering feedback, right? It also could be if you're hosting an open house. There's a lot that goes into when a client thinks and knows that you're available. And it's all about setting the clear expectation and letting them know, hey, this is when I'm available. And again, it starts by setting that appointment during a time you're traditionally available. So for me, that's Monday through Friday, kind of that 9 to 5-ish time period. And I say ish because I don't punch a clock. I don't sit there and say, hey, it's 9:01, I'm late today, or it's 8:45, I'm early, or it's 4:30, I want to cut out for the day, but hey, I'm here till 5. And no, that's not how I work. So there is that flexibility. And because there's that flexibility, sometimes I'm working a little bit past 5 o'clock, but that's super rare. I promise you. That's like once every couple of months. Same for a weekend. Every now and then I've got to show a property on a Saturday morning, but again, that's super rare. That's like once every couple of months. This shouldn't have to be the norm. So anyway, back to what we're saying. You want to set clear expectations, right? You want to set clear expectations with your client. So when you're setting that buyer's consultation, it's giving the alternate choice. That's my favorite type of close. I don't know about you, but that's my favorite type of close, the alternate choice. And to say, hey, I've got time available today at 2 or tomorrow at 4. Which one's better for you? You notice if that's a weekday, if it's Wednesday, I'm asking that question. Today at 2 or tomorrow at 4, I'm giving 2 options that are in the times that I can work. If it's Friday, just say, and I'm talking to somebody at 11 a.m. on Friday, and I'm wanting to set the appointment. It could be, hey, I've got time today at 3 o'clock, or we could do Monday at fill in the blank time, whatever time Monday is going to work for you. And so it's all about setting that clear expectation. Now, if you've got a client that say they also work those hours, because that happens sometimes. Say you're working with a doctor, you're working with a teacher. That's honestly a super common one for me, where I've had teachers who work Monday through Friday. It might be, well, hey, I totally get that you work those traditional hours. That's kind of my schedule too, but I'm happy to be a little flexible for you. When in the early afternoon, when in the late afternoon might work for you. Is there a day that you could be home by 4 o'clock so we can meet around 4:15, 4:30, and go from there? So that way you're being flexible. You're not saying, hey, it's 5 o'clock, I'm done for the day, so good riddance, I can't meet with you. You're not saying that at all. What you're saying is, hey, this is an important thing to me. This boundary I have is important to me. Just like I understand this is your schedule, this is my schedule too. Let's figure out something that's going to work for you. So that's the first tip. is set boundaries and convey those boundaries when you're setting your appointment. I stopped reacting and I started leading. Now, what I mean by that is a big part of leadership is direction, right? Now, people might think of leadership like leading a team, leading individuals, leading in a work environment. Well, as real estate agents, this is a work environment, right? But the work environment's different. We're not leading a team in the traditional sense of leading a team for your organization. We're leading a team from the sense of the team is you and your clients. So we're talking about boundaries here today, right? Now, leading that team, you might think there might be some strife, some conflict if you're saying, hey, I can't meet with you on a Sunday, or I can't work with you on a Saturday afternoon, or whatever the case might be, because you're setting boundaries in your business. I can promise you that for 99% of your clients, they're going to be okay with it. After all, think of it this way. If you're talking with a professional that's outside of the real estate world, like a true professional, an attorney, an insurance agent, an accountant, just somebody who's a true professional, just like we are in the real estate business, you're not going to expect to call them at 7 p.m. on a Friday and get somebody to answer the phone, right? You're not going to expect to say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Accountant, meet with me on Sunday at 10 a.m., right? And for them to just drop everything. No, because they have traditional business hours. You're going to look them up on Google and you're going to see their business hours are going to say Monday through Friday, this time to this time, and you're going to know, hey, I need to work with them during those hours. My clients have reacted the exact same way. When I establish the expectation with them and I say, hey, this is when I work. I work very traditional hours, Monday through Friday. If I need to be flexible around that, I absolutely can, but just know that that's when I typically work. They've absolutely responded in kind, and they've been more than happy to work with me. So I promise you that you're not going to be leaving business on the table if you put this boundary in place. Fewer interruptions and better decisions. What changed for me when I stopped working nights and weekends? Because my clients knew what to expect from me. Because I had established clear boundaries right from the start. Because of that, then I had fewer interruptions at night. I had fewer clients reaching out to me at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. because they just needed to get something off their chest. Sometimes there might still be an odd client that reaches out at that time, but they're not expecting to hear from me right that moment because we've already established, hey, I work traditional hours, I work normal hours, normal business hours. If I can get with you after hours, I will, but just know most of the time it's going to be the next business day for me. So that's the biggest thing that changed for me. I had fewer interruptions for me, and because of that, I was able to make better decisions. Not a client that before I started putting this boundary in place as strict as it is right now, when I still worked evenings, I still worked weekends, who, honestly, this client kind of pushed me that direction to say, hey, I need to have these boundaries in place, because this guy would blow my phone up on the weekends or on the evenings, and he was a low dollar client. Not that it should be about the money, but obviously there needs to be a little bit about the money, because it is what puts a roof over our head, and real estate puts food in our bellies and gas in the tank and helps pay the bills, right? And so he was a low dollar client. He was constantly hassling me off hours. He was a challenge, I'll put it that way. And, eventually I had to let him go as a client because it just wasn't working. His expectations for me and my expectations for him were not simpatico, so to speak. If I had this boundary in place, I would have known, hey, that's not the client for me. I can pass on him and go a separate way. I don't even know if the guy ever bought a home. He was so scattered and just so out there all over the place anyway. He probably didn't buy a home, but I would have been able to make a better decision then. I would have had fewer hassles. I would have had fewer interruptions. And if I put that boundary in place back then, I wish I could go back 10 years and just say, hey, Rob, do this. That's why I'm making these videos. So I can say to you, hey, you, do this. Structure creates freedom, not the other way around. So all this talk about boundaries is fantastic, but it only works if you do this one thing. And this one thing is simple. You got to hold your boundaries. You've got to stay strict to them. You can't flex on this. You've got to make sure that if you plan to work these hours, that you're working those hours. Again, you can, if you choose to, put a little flex time in your schedule. Now, that flex time could be in an evening or on a weekend, but you've got to hold those boundaries. If you don't hold those boundaries, what ends up happening, you're free one weekend and you say, all right, well, agent friend at the office, all right, I'll host an open house for you on this Sunday. That's fine. I'll do it. And then the next weekend comes along and you have a client that calls you and they're only in town for one weekend. And so you've got to get out there that weekend and show properties. And then you've got a listing appointment that you call somebody and you're like, I really want this listing. And well, they can only meet with you on a Thursday at 7 p.m. So you go out there and before you know it, the boundaries, the intentions that you had, well, they're gone because you didn't hold the boundaries. So that's the one thing that you've got to do to make sure this works. Is you've got to make sure you hold the boundaries and keep the standards that you're setting for your business. Chaos feels normal until you question it. Now, you see, most agents think this is unrealistic, and I'll tell you exactly why. Most agents are stuck in the past. This industry has been around for quite a while. They're used to the way it had to be done. They're used to having to drop everything because technology wasn't around back then, right? We couldn't communicate through our old cell phones and chat with people through a text message when, we'd be worried that somebody was at work and we weren't going to be able to get to them. So that worry created scarcity, and that scarcity created us having to be on call 24/7, us as an industry. Well, we don't have to have that scarce mindset anymore. We can have an abundant mindset about this business, and it's really simple. You just got to keep the boundaries that we're talking about. Because of technology, there's simple ways to respond, simple ways to deliver information like email, like text message. There are ways to improve our efficiencies so that we can get out there when we want to work on our terms instead of having to work whenever somebody else says that it's time to work. But again, most agents think it's unrealistic because we're not talking about it. Because we see the example somebody is setting at our office, somebody who's been around for 15, 20, 30 years. We see the example they're setting of working so much, grinding away, working every day because they have to, and they might be successful. They might be successful doing it. They might have the nicest car in the lot. They might have a great house. But that doesn't mean that has to be the way that it is. Again, chaos feels normal until you question it. And so if we're not questioning what that chaos looks like, it's going to feel normal. But we should be questioning it on a regular basis and saying, hey, how can we live our lives and run our businesses in a better and more efficient manner? So anyway, I hope this video has been informative to you. These are just some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years on how to keep standards and expectations in my business, how to keep boundaries around my time to make sure that I'm working when I want to work instead of when somebody else wants me to work. After all, I got into this business for freedom. I want to keep that freedom. I don't want to lose that freedom. If you're looking for a coach to help lead you down this path, reach out to me. Happy to help however I can. Email me, rob@realestatereset.org, or just head over to realestatereset.org and check out everything that we have to offer. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.